tracking analyst. Okay, Isabel is probably in the background. What I'd like for everyone to know is our team tracks and places CE sites and providers on the national disqualified list and the Texas excluded SFSP list. Today, we're going to conduct an experiential session with you this afternoon on the Serious Deficiency Process Notification Form. You guys may remember a couple of months ago, David did a quick whirl for you, but we're going to go a little bit more in depth with you today and answer any questions you may have. And it's to help you better understand to use it and submit notifications and documentation as required by TDA. If you would like to join us and give the tool a test drive, we ask that you pull out your laptops, get those ready, and Jeanette's going to show you where to go. And we welcome your participation, and also that there will be an opportunity for questions after the experiential has concluded. Thank you again. And Jeanette, take it away.
Good afternoon. We're going to talk about the Child and Adult Care Food Program Serious Deficiency Process Notification Form that we have. The Child and Adult Care Food Program Handbook was just updated here in November 15th of 2024. And specifically, this information is covered under Section 10,000 Serious Deficiency. And the handbook may be accessed on the squaremeals.org website under CACFP program, the policy and handbook. Note that all substantive dates are highlighted in yellow in the sections. So for the sponsor-initiated serious deficiency, sponsors of affiliated childcare centers, at-risk centers, adult daycare centers, and daycare home providers must initiate the serious deficiency process if they discover that one of their sponsored sites or providers consistently violates program requirements or the violations are severe enough to demonstrate systemic management problems preventing successful operation of the program. There's 5 steps in the serious deficiency process that should be followed. The first one is a serious deficiency termination. And that's at the point at which a sponsor determines the site provider's noncompliance arise to the level of serious deficiency. The different types of SDs are outlined in the handbook, and you can refer to them for examples. The next step in the process is the notice of serious deficiency, and this is the first notice that would be sent to the site or provider informing them that they have been determined seriously deficient. The third step in this process was the opportunity for corrective action, and that's the time given to the site or provider, allowing them to fully and permanently correct the serious deficiencies. The fourth step in this is the notice of proposed termination and disqualification. The second notification sent to the site or provider if they fail to fully and permanently correct the serious deficiencies. This notice allows for the site or provider to appeal the proposed actions. And the final step in this process is the notice of termination and disqualification. That is the third notification that would be sent to the site or provider if they fail to appeal the notice of proposed termination and disqualification, or they appeal the hearing's official upholds the sponsor's proposed actions. So with this is that we have the serious deficiency process notification. So as the sponsor is required to complete and submit this information for each one of the letters that occurs during the serious deficiency process. We have a form that would be filled out, and the basic information on this form includes the CE's information, the site or provider information, identifying the type of letter, and a file upload. And right here is our website. And our website has this information on here about the serious deficiency process notification to sponsors. And you can access the form right through the link. And then we have where you can, has the information on the left-hand side. You use this form to submit, and what's provided in here, the serious deficiency determination, all 5 steps are outlined here. Information that the notice is required to be submitted to TDA, and failure to submit the notice for each item, you could be placed in the serious deficiency process. And if the sponsor determines there is an imminent threat to health or safety, then must immediately inform the health and licensing authority, and they can take action that is consistent with the authority's recommendation. So with this, on the left-hand or the right-hand side of here, you have the CEID, which you would enter your 5-digit number, the CE name, so the sponsoring organization's name would be in here. You have the contact name, so whoever is going to be the CE's contact for this, their email, and a telephone number. Identification of the TDA region is a drop-down box. The ESC region is also a drop-down box. And then there's a drop-down box for identifying the site type. So I'm going to select daycare home provider. Depending on which selection is made, a series of boxes will automatically appear there. You'll provide the provider ID in there. That's a required field, and the first and last name. The letter type will be selected as well. If it's a notice of serious deficiency, specific questions will be answered at that point. The date of the provider notification, all dates have an item where you can automatically select the date. And the areas of the SD identified appears on this one. So it has a few items that are already here in a drop-down list. If there is something else outside of that, you can type it in and select it, and it will be there. If it's not in the drop-down list, you can add in there. File uploads are also required, and in that you can provide the information. Just you can go through browse files or drag and drop into here. And that would be where you provide your letter that you're sending or any other supporting documentation that's received, such as if there was something from the state or local licensing or health authorities regarding the imminent threats. There's also a box where you can have a copy of your responses sent to you through the email that you provide here and to submit this. The serious deficiency process notifications are reviewed. TDA staff will review these serious deficiency notifications submitted. For those serious deficiencies that are not fully and permanently corrected timely and escalate to a notice of termination, TDA will make a determination. They concur with the recommendation for the responsible principals, institution, or individuals to be placed on the NDL. If they are determined to be placed on the NDL and TDA concurs, an email will be sent to the contracting entity with an attachment regarding the determination made by TDA. The example is up on the screen of an attachment that would be included in there. This one happens to be for a provider. So it'll identify the CE ID, the name, the provider ID, provider name. If it was a site, it would be the site ID and the site name, the responsible individuals who are identified, and TDA is determined regarding placement on the NDL and the effective date of that placement. TDA will place those responsible individuals on the NDL. Responsible principals who are placed on the NDL will remain on the list for a minimum of 7 years from the date of disqualification, unless the debt is owed under the program and it's paid. They will come off. If it's unpaid, they will remain on there. The RPIs placed on the NDL may not participate in any other child nutrition programs. If you have any questions for technical assistance, please contact your local ESC. For compliance concerns, please contact community.ops@texasagriculture.gov. And for any issues with submitting the form, please contact FN records tracking at texasagriculture.gov.
Thank you, Anjanette. Isabel, if you will just unmute your mic and just say hello to everyone. Isabel is our records and tracking analyst for food and nutrition.
Hello, nice to meet everybody.
Thank you. We will turn it over to the next presenter. Any questions for us? All right, thank you guys.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm David Dirksen. I am the Assistant Director for Policy. I will be giving you a policy update today. Give that to me, share my screen. There we go. All right, I've got a lot to cover, so let's get to it. So we're going to start with something that I know is some of you probably are eager to hear about, and it is the monitoring waivers for sponsors of daycare homes and unaffiliated centers. So really, oops, hold on. Really, this should say on-site monitoring waiver because it's a waiver of on-site monitoring requirements. But it is a waiver that USDA has approved. It expires in September 30th this year at the end of the program year. If it is successful, we will ask for it again. And hopefully we now have the infrastructure in place to process those waivers so that you will be able to take advantage of them for the duration of the next program year. But what does it entail? I've covered this before in a previous call, but it doesn't hurt to refresh now that it is available for you to apply for. So it applies to child care centers, daycare home providers, or sponsors of daycare homes, and sponsors of adult daycares. At-risk sponsors cannot use it. At-risk sites are not eligible for the waiver. You have to be in good standing. But what it allows is one of the 3 required reviews that you have to do each year may be conducted off-site. Possibly a second review may be conducted off-site for sites that are over 100 miles or over 2 hours travel time away. It says from the sponsor's headquarters, but really it's the sponsor's field offices. So if you have any offices, if you have any staff that's near where the site is, it has to be over 100 miles away from those locations. It has to be a sizable distance for you to travel. Sponsors that utilize review averaging cannot utilize this process for site centers that will only be visited twice a year, and that's regardless of distance from any of your offices. So how do you apply? We have an on-site monitoring waiver request form. There's a link right there. We're going to post this presentation for you after the call, so you can link right there. But it is available on the CACFP administration/forms page. There's a lot of forms in that table, but it is on there, and it's also on the policy/handbook page. There's an announcement, and it links directly to that form. And you have to provide, obviously, the number and names of all the sites that you want to do. If you're going to do a second review, you have to list everyone that's over 100 miles or 2 hours away from the field office. And you have to upload an off-site monitoring plan for review. That is a separate document. It's a Word document. It is also on the CACFP administration and forms page. And you have to fill that out, upload it with the form. And there are some attestations here that you have to agree to within the form in order to use the waiver. Note, before I go on with this, there is a small thing you should be aware of. If you have a bunch of sites, the form does have some limitations, some character limitations. So what you do is you go in, there's a drop down, and you can select a bunch of sites. If for some reason you get an error message, delete some of those sites from the list and you'll have to submit it multiple times. But you only have to upload the offsite monitoring plan once. So apologies for that slight inconvenience, just a limitation of the system that we use. So the offsite monitoring implementation plan that you fill out, there's a series of questions that you have to answer. How you're going to determine eligibility for your sites. The sites themselves have to be in good standing. So how are you determining that? What virtual monitoring system are you going to use, and how are you going to use that system? You know, how are you going to view the meal service? What is your process for that? You need to be as specific as you can. We want to know the methodology for identifying serious deficiencies, misuse of federal funds. For example, maybe you are requiring them to submit their documentation ahead of time, just like we do for you guys. That would be one way that you let us know that that's how you're looking for maybe fraudulent documentation or something like that. What happens if the provider or the site misses the virtual review? How do you handle that? How are you going to track those sites and providers specifically? So these are the things you need to be thinking about. Make sure you do a good job, be as detailed as you can, and you're going to upload that with the request form. We will review it, and then we will let you know if you're approved or not. We may have more information for you, more questions for you along the way. So that's why it's good to provide as much information as you can. One condition of using this waiver, we have to report to USDA some information, and that information has to come from you. So you have to report to us how the waiver impacted the meal service operations, how it facilitated your oversight abilities. You're going to have to do a summary comparison of common findings for the on-site reviews versus the off-site reviews. So you're going to have to look at the end of the year that when you looked at on-site versus off-site, what do those findings look like? How did this impact your decision to continue participating in CACFP? We know that traveling is very, very difficult. So we hope that this waiver helps you in that way and helps if you want to continue on. Address any actions taken to address any misuse of program funds. And then how the waiver impacted any quantity of paperwork. That's a standard question we always have to report. Usually the quantity of paperwork does not decrease because you still have to monitor the same number of things. But if it did, there you go. So we will be, let me see if it's on the next slide. Okay, before I go on to this waiver, we will be creating that reporting mechanism for you, and we will have it available to you. You need to send us that information by September 15th. So be on the lookout for that reporting mechanism and further instructions. We will make sure we get that information out to everyone who has an approved waiver. So now moving on, this is a brand new waiver, Ramadan non-congregate waiver. This is something that USDA reached out to the states and said, hey, we are offering this waiver. You can apply for it. It's a great thing. So I see some hearts. People are excited about this. So let me talk about how this works. So Ramadan this year is between February 28th and March 30th. During Ramadan, people fast, right? And including some kids. So how do you feed those kids still? Well, the best way to do it is to offer them, in case of CACFP, your lunch, your breakfast and your snack, if that's what you're serving, the meals that you're approved to serve. You hand that off to the kids. They can take it home and eat during the hours when they're allowed to eat. It's a great thing to have. There are some requirements that I'm going to go through related to this. First of all, the waiver only applies to school districts, CACFP at-risk sites, adult daycare centers, emergency shelters, and outside school hours care centers. Who is excluded? daycare home providers and traditional child care centers. The reasoning for that is that young children not of school age that are in those daycare homes and in the child care centers typically are not fasting. So USDA did not offer the waiver to those groups. I will say this, if you are a sponsor of a child care center, or you're an independent center or a sponsor of daycare home providers, and this issue is coming up where you're seeing that there are kids fasting, something like that, please reach out to your ESCs about that. I cannot guarantee that we would be able to get that approved for you, but that is data we want to report to USDA. They will want to know that. And we just want to keep tabs on that. Anytime anyone's excluded from a waiver, we just want to know what's going on. So please do that. They'll let us know, and we'll gather that data and see what we can do with it. Some requirements are you cannot do multi-day meal bundling or parent pickup. These are for children who are at attendance at your site that day. Okay, if they're absent, they wouldn't be getting meals normally under a congregate setting. So we have to do it day by day, and it's not a parent pickup situation. But you can bundle all of the day's meals together, obviously. You have to be careful about this. You know, this is about how a religious practice for folks. You don't want to question them. So basically, if the child or their parents indicate verbally, does not have to be in writing, but can be in writing, that they are fasting, you take them at their word, you can give them the non-congregate meals. But it is only intended for the kids who are fasting. So you don't question them, but still plan on doing congregate feeding at your site for anyone who's not fasting, okay? Now, where it gets a little confusing is if you see someone who you think should be fasting, and for whatever reason you see them eating either the meal you handed them as a non-congregate meal or a snack, and you're like, oh, they should be fasting. Do not deny them the non-congregate meal. If they've indicated they're fasting, give them the meal. Where that's how this is going to work. So it's just being respectful and understanding that kids are kids, and we don't know exactly what's going on, but that's how we're applying the waiver, and that's based on USDA's guidance. So I just got word the form is almost ready to go. It will be up. I don't know if it will be tomorrow, but it will be early next week. I'm hoping by Monday. We still have to do a little bit round of testing and make sure everything's in place. You do have to apply. You do have to let us know. It's not a difficult form at all. It's pretty easy. Just put in your information and attest that you will abide by the requirements. We just want to make sure you understand the requirements, and we hold you to that. If we go out and we see that you've just made everything non-congregate or something like that, we would have to issue a finding. So we just need to make sure that you attest to the requirements and understand what's happening. We will approve those really quick. As soon as you notice that, it will post an announcement on the CACFP policy/handbook page. We'll put something in the newsletter. The newsletter comes out in the middle of the month, though. So please, if you're interested in this, look out on Square Meals for that announcement. I believe the form itself is not going to be on Square Meals. This waiver is one that we will keep in download forms. That's based on who at TDA is processing the waivers. So it sort of funnels through there. So in TXUNPS and download forms under the CACFP and SNP modules, that is where that will be available. And we'll have those instructions up so you understand, and you can begin submitting those as soon as you can so that you can start doing that right away. All right, let's talk about rural summer non-congress for the SFSP folks out there on the call. Once again, in 2025, this is a permanent thing. There is non-congregate feeding available in rural areas. I am not going to go too crazy explaining this right now because we don't have a lot of time, but I will say it's going to be very similar to last year. There will be, you can do grab and go unitized meals up to 10 days max. We recommend 5. Parent and guardian pickup flexibilities are available. Home delivery is available up to a 5-day max distribution. Bulk food component distribution up to a 5-day max distribution. That's another one that we don't recommend because it's very difficult to be compliant with, and it's difficult for a lot of families to manage that, but it is available. And there are, you can do a hybrid congregate, non-congregate site. There's a very specific rules around that. I'm not going into those today, but just a minute and I will give you an announcement about that. So it has to be rural. There's a site mapper that we have that you can go out. It's actually live right now. You can go out and see if your site is in a rural area, and there's a 2-mile proximity requirement. You have to be at least 2 miles away from the next nearest site. We do approve exceptions on a case-by-case basis. Like if there's another site serving meals and there is no overlap in the intended days of meal consumption, we would approve that. If there's a driving distance, if the driving distance from one site to the next is over 2 miles, we would approve that. Please let your ESCs know if you're worried about that proximity so they can let us know. We can be aware of that if you're planning on applying. We do evaluate sponsors on a case-by-case basis. Make sure you're in good standing. You know, if you've had previous child nutrition program experience, it's not a prerequisite, but it might mean that we go out and do a more rigid pre-approval visit if you haven't had any experience and you're trying to do that for the first time. Keep in mind that if you have been doing congregate feeding at a site for years and years and you want to switch that site to a non-congregate site and it meets all proximity requirements, it's in a rural area, great, but it's considered a new site. That means that you have to go out and do the first 2-week site visit, the pre-op visits, all of the required monitoring for a new site goes into place if you switch to that site. We have our dedicated summer non-congregate feeding program page on Square Meals. The link is at the bottom. Right now, it's still very heavily 2024 focused. That's going to change on Monday. So you probably don't need to go there today, but on Monday, we're going to update it. We should have the new non-congregate request form live, which is several months earlier than we did it before. So that's good news. New FAQs won't be up on Monday. They'll probably be out in, I'm hoping, 2 weeks or so. They'll look a lot like the FAQs from last year, but there's some new requirements, some new flexibilities and things like that. We've made some tweaks to our application one-pager and to some of the monitoring forms. Like I said, this is a very high-level view of this. So here we go, webinar alert. We encourage you on February 27th at 2 p.m., we will be hosting a webinar on rural non-congregate, where I will really get into the weeds of this, where I'll talk about all of the flexibilities. And there's some new flexibilities this year, so that's a good thing. There's some new requirements and whatnot. So I'm going to get into all of that. I think it's going to be an hour and a half. Please keep an eye on Square Meals and the newsletters and the policy, the summer meals policy / handbook pages for that announcement. We'll probably be doing an email blast about it too. I reckon it's going to be a whole thing. So that's where we'll really get into the information. So now we're going to get into some quick, because I want to make sure we have time for everyone else and questions. Some other recent policy updates. SFSP reimbursement rates for 2025, they are up. That's the link. I I won't linger on this. This will get posted, but it's on the summer meals reimbursement pages. 3.6% increase from 2024. And let's look at some recent policy memos. Okay. I really do have to go quickly on this. So there have been quite a few since we met, but I'm going to fly through this. There are links that give you all of this same information. So I hope you will go and look at them. Everything I'm about to cover is also going to eventually be put into the handbook. A lot of this is up on Square Meals already on that policy. I can't stress going to the CACFP policy handbooks page and clicking on that policy updates and news, because a lot of that stuff has been up there and I'm just covering that. So the first memo, there's been some clarification guidance on child nutrition labels. Basically, the main gist of this one is to clarify the date that's on the label. If you're using a product with the CN label and there's a date on it, that's the date it was approved initially. CN labels are only good for 5 years, but that product might get reauthorized, but the product may still have an old label on it. So just because that authorization date may be older than 5 years doesn't mean that product is necessarily bad or that that label is expired. You need to go use the CN label verification system. There's a link to it. That will tell you the valid date, the date that the label is currently valid through. So just keep that in mind. Grain requirements. There's an old memo out there, and this is just an updated version, and it's basically adding information for that final rule, the nutrition standard final rule. I've covered it on this call. We've covered it at MegaCon. But there's information about added sugars, substituting vegetables for grains. There's just some clarifying language and updated terminology. That's the link to where you can see that memo. Feeding infants, same deal, right? The big thing in the final rule for nutrition standards is that I believe registered dietitians can sign medical statements, can write medical statements. So that is cleared up in the memo. Again, it's a memo that's existed for a long time. It's just updated with those new requirements. We will be adding that to our handbooks, information on added sugars, crediting of some other foods. So please go read that. OVS and family style meals, just some updated clarification, not a lot of changes. It's just clarifying text. So good information if you offer those kind of meals. And then milk substitutions. Again, talks about medical statements. There were all these old memos that were out there that had great information, but they all had to be updated because of this nutrition standards rule. So that's what we've seen, kind of these updated memos that were old, they're new again because they have this new information. So I won't go through all of this, but please do read that. And now something about yogurt. So I think it was in 2016 or 2017, USDA put out a request for comment because there's all these new yogurts on the market. It's like high protein yogurts. And they said, hey, should we be crediting these differently? Right now we credit all the yogurts the same. And at that time, they got overwhelming comments back that said, no, please keep the crediting the same. It's eight years later or so, they are now seeking input again to see if anything's changed. They want your opinion. Please give your opinion. If you have concerns about this or thoughts on it, the link is right there for more information on this, and as well as the link where you can go and submit comments. Comments are due by March 26th. So if you have thoughts on it, please do that. They do actually look at your comments. That's why crediting has been consistent over the last few years. And then I think this is the last thing, the school data report for area eligibility. So this, we are required by February 15th to post the list of all schools with 50% or more free or reduced price students. We base that on October 2024 data for CEP schools. They have a identified student percentage of 31.25. I won't do too much math for you, but basically it means half the kids at that school would qualify for free or reduced price meals. And what does that mean? It means those schools are area eligible. What does that mean? It means that those schools can participate in SFSP, the Seamless Summer Option, or CACFP at risk. Also, schools in the attendance area that feed into those schools are also eligible. So it's a really important list so you can know who is eligible, which sites are eligible to run those programs in the upcoming summer and the upcoming program year. Sorry that I had to blaze through that really fast. I will be around for questions at the end if we have time. Please keep an eye on Square Meals. Like I said, thank you so much and have a great day.
Okay, thank you, David. Hello, everyone. My name is Catherine Wright Steele, and I wanted to bring a couple of updates today. The first one being about the conferences that are happening this spring. So there's two major conferences targeting CACFP this spring. The first one is the National CACFP Association Conference. That is in Dallas, April 15th through 17th. So I know many of you are familiar with this one. It's one that travels around the country every year, is hosted by the National Association, and of course has a registration fee associated with attending. TDA will be hosting a track at that conference and a booth. Later in the spring, we will be hosting MegaCon here in Austin, back at the AT&T Center. Those dates are May 21st through the 23rd. We are offering the exact same content, the same track that we're doing at the National Conference in Dallas in April will be at MegaCon in May. So I wanted to let everybody know that you will not receive really any more or additional information by attending both events. And we will be limiting registration to MegaCon. It's out of our control this year and not a trend I would expect to continue in future years, but the space is limited due to construction happening on the facility. And so we came to this group, I believe, in our last meeting, and I mentioned that we would not be including CACFP and MegaCon because we were taking our content to the national conference. And we heard from some of you on that call that you didn't plan to attend the national conference and didn't want to miss out on the content. So we have decided to bring the track to MegaCon. And for those that don't plan to attend the national conference in Dallas, please join us in MegaCon in May. If you are attending, you might hold back and not attend MegaCon so that you can save a spot for somebody that isn't already attending the national conference. I also wanted to touch base on the local food for schools and childcare funding that is coming down from USDA. Many of you might know that we have already administered one round of funding very similar to this, except it was earmarked for schools only. It didn't include CACFP providers. We've been notified that Texas has access to up to about 72 million. 21.8 of that would be earmarked for child and adult care food programs. We cannot receive this money until we have completed everything in the round one funding that I mentioned is being administered to schools. So right now we are working on a plan for how we would administer that funding. It is focused on the local procurement of fresh, minimally processed foods. And we've learned a lot in round one working with the schools. And so we'd like to do everything we can to simplify how we would administer that in round two and what would be most beneficial to the CACFP programs. So I mentioned that just to say more information to come. We have not drafted our plan, nor has it been approved by USDA. That is due in April. So that's just something that we are working on and plan to administer in Texas. Also, I wanted to mention that this year we'll be looking for more applications for our CACFP input work group. That group meets with us on a routine basis. It is made up of membership that represents our CACFP CEs across the state. So we have members that are of all sponsor types and sizes. And this group can bring issues to us that they are hearing and learning about from administering CACFP on the front lines. We also bring ideas and seek feedback from this group of things that we are doing at the agency. It just really helps to inform us and to help us improve our administration of the programs. So the application process will begin probably in May. So you can look for information at our booth at the National CACFP Conference for application information, also at MegaCon, and then in our newsletters and on our website. So anyone that is interested in maybe joining the input work group, we'd love to have you, and we'll be doing the application process in May. Let's see, Esmeralda, that wraps up my topics. Would you like to touch on the next one?
Sure. Let me go ahead and share my screen real quick. So just a brief update for CACFP Week. This will be celebrated March 16th through the 22nd. So in the past, we have handed out a Celebration Week poster, a parent postcard, and WIC partnership materials. But due to some unforeseen circumstances, we will not be able to provide printed materials for this year's celebration. But this year, we're super excited to offer new digital assets. So we really appreciate the unique efforts of each site in supporting the community. And as a way to say thanks, we will introduce 2 new digital posters. So one will be lively, fun, reflecting, the energetic approach of child-focused sites, while the other will capture the dedication that we see in adult care centers. We are also going to provide a digital DIY celebration kit with ideas for creating banners, photo backdrops, and photo props. And don't worry, although we can't send them, you will be able to find printable versions of each of these on the Square Meals site soon. We will also give you printable digital activity sheets, coloring pages, and bookmarks. With this new approach, we value your feedback. So once the celebration week is over, we will send out a survey to collect that feedback. And then we'd also love to visit your sites during CACFP Week. So I'll drop a link in the chat, or you can very quickly scan this QR code and then let us know if you are interested in a visit. But that is all I have. So thank you for listening.
Thanks, Esmeralda. So I've got the last item here and talking through next steps for communication with our CACFP partners. If you were on the last quarterly meeting, you'll recall that we asked for some feedback from you all about this call. As attendance and engagement have been somewhat inconsistent at times, we want to be mindful of the resources that go into this call, including your time, while making sure we're responsive to your needs. And so to that end, we're going to shift the frequency of this call. Instead of quarterly, we'll schedule a community call whenever there's some significant updates to share in this forum. So we'll make this discussion happen as needed rather than having a set frequency. We will continue the regular cadence of communication with you in our newsletters and also on the updates we share on our website. We'll also continue to rely on the CACFP Input Work Group, which Catherine mentioned earlier, and we encourage you to apply and stay in communication with your representatives there, as they really represent the broader CACFP CE community. And the purpose of that work group to gather feedback directly from you all is really important and helpful. It helps assess challenges and opportunities that are happening at the local level and bring TDA recommendations and issues. So we're going to give this approach a try, making this community call an ad hoc meeting rather than quarterly. And if we hear it's not meeting the need, we can always adjust. We are committed to keeping the lines of communication open with you. So thank you for your flexibility, and we'll keep talking and see how this goes. And with that, that is the last formal agenda item that we had. So we will open it up for questions. When will registration open for MegaCon? Esmeralda, Catherine?
I don't have that date, but I'll get back with you, and we'll be sure to include it in the next CSCFP newsletter that's going out next month.
Okay. And the conference dates again?
Are the MegaCon is May 21st through the 23rd.
Thank you. David, can you take this one about the SD process, or is this all Frida? This might be Frida.
It's Frida.
Okay, on our website, I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice, guys. On our Square Meals website, there is a list of the ESCs there. I will try to go and get a link and put it in here so that you can have a direct link to that. So on our Square Meals website is the corresponding ESC for you, for where you're located. There's a map out there. Thank you.
Thanks, Frida. And I see Walter posted the regions here in the chat. There's a couple questions in the comments about federal funding. So we did that right at the top of the hour on the call. So we are business as usual. At this time, Stephanie Robinson had given a quick update at the beginning. So I'm sorry if y'all missed it. So I'll just reiterate. Our federal funding at this time is not frozen, so we are continuing business as usual at this time. So no impact to the January claims. I'm seeing a question on that as well. Okay, and I think this question is about the National CACFP conference dates as well.
The National CACFP conference is in Dallas, April 15th through the 17th.
I see the suggestion in the comments here about posting the agenda ahead of time so y'all can plan for the proper resource to be there. Absolutely, thank you for that recommendation, especially as we're moving to ad hoc. We'll want to give y'all plenty of time to determine and accommodate your schedules. I had a staff name identified on the NDL from one of my sponsored sites. I reported it to TDA via CACFP BOPS. Thanks for letting us know. We can follow up through your request from CACFP BOPS. And I see your name here, Suzanne, so we'll also just do a check to make sure that we've received it. The link for early registration for conference in Dallas. We may have to get back with you on that one. I don't know if anyone on our call would have that handy, but we can follow up. Okay, David, this one says to you. Can you please tell me where I can find those FNS updates again?
I suspect you're talking about all of the memos that came out, and they are all on various pages on the FNS website. I have posted all of the links in my presentation, which will get posted. I can try to slap some of them into the chat here for you if you want to copy and paste them out of your computer. I'll try to do that real fast. If not, if I don't get to it before we end the call, then please look at the presentation because they're on there. And also go to policy. That's where you can find it. Square Meals, CACFP, policy/handbook at the very top of the page, policy updates and news, expand it. There's a whole list of entries and the links should be all there too.
Thanks, David. Earlier one says, would we submit an SPWA if a sponsor site were to request to print out the materials for CACFP week? Esmeralda?
That's probably a Stephanie question rather than Esmeralda.
Where'd that question go? Yeah, because if it's CACFP only and it's for a conference, it would not require SPWA.
They're talking about printing CACFP week promotional items that they had it planned to print, because typically TDA would have printed that and made them available.
Yeah, that's not a SPWA cost. That would just be prior approval on a budget.
Stuff. Okay, I see we got the CACFP Association Conference registration link in the chat. Suzanne, we see another response here. We'll follow up with you after the call to make sure we've got what we need there and that we're being responsive to your request.
Lindsay. Frida, can you ask Suzanne what is the name, the CE name?
Sure, Suzanne Gilliam, can you put your CE name in the chat for us?
I've got the name and I'm looking for it right now.
Thanks, Jeff.
I'll respond once I've found the email.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, I see I filled out a form on DoD to see if I could possibly have more funds. Who can I ask to see if that form has gone through? We'll talk to you offline with USDA Foods so that we can tackle that one. Okay. I think I got all of the questions in the chat. I'm starting to see. Thank you. Thank you all so much for your time today. We really appreciate it, and we will talk with you again soon.